It's 6 o'clock, Tuesday, September 27th, City Council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Join me if you can for our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, we thank you for another day that you've given us. Father, as we watch this storm approach our country, just pray for safety for those in its path. Pray for first responders and elected officials and staff that will be making decisions that will affect people's safety. Father, pray especially for our community. Pray for guidance and wisdom that we'll know what to do in the right time. And as we conduct your business tonight, just help us to do what's in line with a greater good. In your name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Popson.
Here.
Councilmember Myers. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Streetman.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson. Here. Councilmember Goshen.
Here.
Councilmember Han. Mayor Pounds.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item, item 2, citizens' comments.
Mr. Gillum is the only person. signed up.
Mr. Gillum, you're up.
Thank you. I know most of you, but I'm Buddy Gillum from the VFW here on the island. And the first thing I'd like to do is thank the ATAX committee for their recommendation on our request for the grant. And also to the council for your consideration. Our mission at the VFW is to support our active duty, our veterans, and our community. And what we have done in the last 2 years, we feel like we have fulfilled that obligation. A lot of you were at our courtyard dedication. So we dedicated that to American patriots. And we funded that with your help. But we get a tremendous amount of traffic coming and going through that path. And we recommend that we have over 4,000 visitors, not counting members, that come to the island annually. So we feel like we've fulfilled that obligation as a partnership. And now the reason we wanted to do what we did is to honor those patriots and have safe and easy access to our post. Our request for this ATAX grant involves our elevator. We've provided all the background information on that, and that does the same thing. It helps with safety and easy access to our post. Our current elevator has broken down a few times recently, and people have actually got stuck in it. I don't know about them, that's one thing I just don't like to think about, it getting stuck in the elevator. So we appreciate your consideration, as I said. And I'd like to ask my partner and thank also George Page for being a fellow committee member. And I'd like to introduce, you all know, our current post commander, Commander Bo Stallings. And we're a team at that post, and we consider ourselves a partner with the Isle of Palms. We've been here a long time, and we open our doors to all guests. And like I said, we have a lot of people that come to this island, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate them as best we can. Okay, George?
I think we only have about 30 seconds left here. You guys, again, thank you for the consideration. And we do have a great need for an elevator. We bring an awful lot of people on this island who are disabled vets. And particularly after the Afghan war, there's a lot of lower extremities that we have to deal with. And we're trying to give them as good a situation as possible. I will say we have 4,000 people during the summer come through our walkway, which we fund and we take care of. Second, it's 4,000 members come through our V every year. So about 35% of those people stay on the island because they come here. They know that it's a great place to be. It's a great island to be in. I know I have no time left, but I'll be glad to answer any questions if possible.
And George, your role again is president of the auxiliary.
That's correct.
Great.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
I believe Miss Nemes, she was just handing something out. Is that correct, Miss Nemes? I think she was just. Were you going to speak or? Yes. Then, okay.
I'm a full-time resident. I passed that to
Go ahead, Michael, can you just pull it
This
down?
side.
Pull it- you can pull it down.
short people. Okay. I have passed out copies of the media article, Charleston Tourism Machine. Its lack of scrutiny and accountability keeps public in dark about millions. It was published on September 23rd and again on the 25th. And I just want to make a couple of comments about the article, things that were left out or other comments. First of all, it did incorrectly quote me and I did contact them about it. I did not resign from the committee, the ATAX committee, because of Explore Charleston. I resigned because the system was so broken. I felt I was spinning my wheels and trying to get change through that method. So I sought a better method for awareness and education. And here's one of the results in this article. Post and Courier was made aware of my reasons for resignation before the article, and they failed to correct and they have apologized to me. I dare say if I had still been on the ATAX committee, I wouldn't have felt free to participate by current IOP official standards. And as a full-time resident, I find this information extremely helpful to be brought to the light, and I hope that others do too. Second, note that the Post and Courier did not ding IOP as they could have, but presented us positively for asking questions about the problems with the system. I emphasize to the journalists that should be the focus rather than pointing out any mistakes or any past problems that there might have been in ATAX spending. We had an alternative here on the island to pursue, which was the Folly model. I personally feel it was a mistake not to look at that a little harder and perhaps incorporate that into our spending, but maybe in the future that will happen. This article does raise awareness about the use of taxpayers' money. CVB does not really see themselves as promoting Isle of Palms, but more regional focus. I understand that. And I do believe that we were looking at, through the ATAX committee, a combination of perhaps participating in their regional as well as the local IOP promotion. I hope in the future that'll be looked at again. I appreciate that they want to work to improve within their own chosen guidelines and controls, but I do believe that customer-driven change would be best. Third, the ATAX advisory boards are really not mentioned in here, but they could and should be more functional and respected. This is one level of responsibility of which change could possibly be made at the local level if the members are carefully chosen for their experience and expertise and take the time to thoroughly study the issues. As Mr. Truslow and Mr. Burns have done, I also believe Ms. Kovalich
Miss
and
Nemes,
Ms.
if you could wrap
Lawrence
up your comment.
are quite informed and willing to put in the time to understand the issues thoroughly. Please note the conflict of interest part or the code of ethics part about the Board of Governors, of which our councilman was an appointed member. Two of our council people accepted $500 Seawee Gala tickets from Explore Charleston while voting to give them $1 million plus in this year's funding. I hope you find this article helpful. It was written by a Pulitzer-winning journalist and his fellow PBS-sponsored co-worker. There's potentially more to come. Let us be the people who are the leaders in the positive change in the ATAX system, not the poor example of condoning lack of transparency and accountability. I applaud IOP residents and leaders who have brought this to the light, joining others statewide to demand better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next item are special presentations. We have 3 tonight, some really good ones. First one will be the consideration of the Spirit of the Island Award to Jeffrey Forkland. We need a motion.
So
Make the
moved.
motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Peanuts paid off.
Jeffrey was handing out boiled peanuts before we started here tonight. Not that I had anything to do with it at all. So let me just read over two letters of recommendation for this particular award. This is our second Spirit of the Island Award that we started earlier this year, brought up last year by Councilmember Ward. And I think it's been, the first two recipients are quite appropriate for this new award. So let me just read, I could highlight them, but let me just read them because I think they're so well written. Two different residents recommended Jeffrey for this award. I would like to recommend Jeffrey Forkland for the Spirit of Island Award. Over the past 2 years, Jeffrey has truly shown what a kind and generous neighbor he is. Without any request, he delivered home-cooked meals to neighbors if he heard they were sick or quarantined or just to be kind. He continues to do this unprompted for neighbors around the island. I think he fits the Spirit of the Island criteria and would love to see him recognized for his kindness, generosity, and neighborliness. Second one is I recommend Isle of Palm resident Jeffrey Forkland be awarded the City of Isle of Palm Spirit of the Island Award. Past couple of years, Jeffrey has prepared and delivered probably hundreds of delicious homemade meals to island residents on a volunteer basis. It is important to note no one ever asked him for a meal. He just did it on his own, plus never charged anyone. The meals were free. This valuable service was provided during the COVID pandemic when many people did not want to venture outside their homes. I did not know Jeffrey until I became sick in the spring of 2021. I was in the Roper Hospital ICU unit in May for several days. When I came home, there were delicious meals by my front door from Jeffrey. He heard I was sick and wanted to help. He has delivered probably 40 more meals to me randomly since then. My experience with Jeffrey alone qualifies him to receive this prestigious award. However, I know he has done the same thing for many other people on the island. Jeffrey is a very kind and generous individual who truly embodies the Spirit of the Island Award. So Jeffrey, in recognition of that, we would like to make you our second recipient of the Spirit of Island Award presented to Jeffrey Forkland in recognition of your outstanding service and dedication to Isle of Palm, September 2022.
Yeah, you'll be all staying there.
Nice meeting you. Nice. Good job.
Told him we would do it early so they could go have a nice dinner somewhere.
That was half the crowd.
I failed to mention that second article was written by Councilmember Ward, who had the personal experience with Jeffrey and his kindness. Our second is recognition of Hartley to Pass. It's a big deal on his win in the Eastern Surfing Association Championships. Hartley, we've got a small token of appreciation and recognition. I think it was first place in short and longboard, if I understand that right. So we are proud to have you, call you one of our own, and proud that you represented IOP in the championship. So congratulations.
Yeah.
You're getting a word.
Thank you, guys.
Very nice.
Good way to start our meeting. Ryan, not that you have anything to follow up on here, pal, but we've got drainage master plan presentation from David and Floyd. Ryan Phillips has joined us. Thought it was a good time. We are still planning to have our master plan finished by the end of this calendar year. Thought it would be a good time to kind of step back and talk about work that's been done, work that's coming. So I know you've got a presentation. So Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Ours might not be as exciting.
We're still
but
flat for you,
it's-
man.
It's needed.
Yeah,
Clear
yeah.
the room.
What a pertinent topic right before the rains.
Oh, that's right.
Can everyone see this screen?
Yeah, everyone
Back
left.
a little bit.
And Ryan Phillips again, Davidson Floyd, Aaron Aiken, Davidson Floyd, we're glad to be here to help y'all and actually saw some drainage work this morning, so we're seeing fruits of the labor. Promise it'll be a quick update. We won't quiz you or anything. Just wanted to quickly just remind everybody of the intent of this project. Really painting the path for the future. The two parts of this are phase 4 area. So the island, the city staff broken up the island into 3 different phases, trying to tackle each area piece by piece, like a recipe. Our current focus has been phase 4, which is 29th Avenue to Breach Inlet. So we've been really focusing on that area. Nothing has been done to date there, so we're really starting from scratch, trying to develop an understanding of everything, try to come up with solutions, identify potential funding, and hopefully actually solve those problems. The next piece is really to step back. Once we finish the phase 4, we're actually, the second piece of this project is to step back, look at the entire island, package everything together in a capital improvement plan, and move forward with actually implementing the improvements. Now, we have deviated a little bit along the way, just as fundings come about. Don't want to miss out on those opportunities, so we're working with Desiree and staff, trying to be fluid, no pun intended, to try to fix the problem. So we'll just quickly touch on the phase 4, since that's really our current focus, but there are some other things in the work on other parts of the island that we're working with staff on. So again, first thing we did for phase 4, biggest piece of the puzzle, is to actually understand what's on the ground. So we actually went out, collected can you hear me?
Yes.
Try to talk loud enough, but I realize we're online. So we actually went out, surveyed all the infrastructure, boots on the ground, inspected everything to get a handle on what's there, the condition it's in, and just get data to actually analyze the system. And really one of the first things out of this was to give Robert all of the data on the system that needs maintenance. So we actually went ahead and said all of these pieces of infrastructure that are here today need maintenance, need some repairs. So they've actually been working on that to clean out pipelines, fix silted end inlets, and then also just address some of the tidal backflow problems. So really that was what we called a conditions assessment, just really understand what's there and the state that it's in. With that, I'll pass it off to our professor here on collecting a lot of good information.
How's everyone doing? Once again, my name is Aaron Aiken. Really the next step after we got boots on the ground, saw the existing conditions of everything, is we went out and strategically put water level and rainfall monitoring stations across the island. The antidote we always use is anytime you go to the doctor, they just don't, send you over right for surgery, or I hope they don't. They run a bunch of tests, they see how you're doing, and they try to validate a lot of their assumptions with their diagnosis. And that's essentially the purpose of these monitoring stations. We put them out, we see how the system actually responds to real rainfall events, and use that to validate our assumptions. So over the course of our study, we had 4 located across the island. We had 1 within a manhole junction box at Ocean Boulevard along the beach access coming off of 2nd Avenue. We recently actually installed a groundwater monitoring station at the 6th Avenue beach access as part of validation for some of the conceptual designs that we developed over the course of this project so far, in order to help validate some of the designs that we included in some of the skip applications. That is ongoing. For about 6 months, we had a water level monitoring system out at the county park. And then probably our most important station was out at the marina. Some of you may have seen it out on one of the T docks. Was actually collecting tide and rainfall data to use in our modeling and simulations. So we took all of this data, our boots on the ground data, our monitoring data, and that's just another slide showing some of the collected data. And we used it to create a full simulation of the entire phase 4 area. Really what this concluded is there are two major problems for Isle of Palms. The first being storm surge flooding from low-lying elevation areas. And the second being rainfall-driven flooding from areas with no drainage infrastructure, very limited drainage infrastructure. We were able to use all this in a full evaluation of the entire system to identify areas of significant flooding, by which we mean areas where in our simulations we showed flooding or standing water at 6 inches of depth or greater for more than 30 minutes. And then we try to confer this knowledge, or we discussed a lot of these spots with Douglas and Robert to make sure that our assumptions were valid and that there were actual flooding concerns in a lot of these areas. So up here on the map in red, we have identified some of those significant areas in red. Once again, that's what we saw as 6 inches of depth for more than 30 minutes, or areas with significant pooling, as well as in blue, areas with minor improvements. Things that are going to solve more of your nuisance flooding, some of your smaller ponds, ponding water up on the road, but areas where you're not going to have, 6 inches to a couple feet of water standing on the roadway. We identified 8 areas of significant flooding. The first two being the area along Palm Boulevard and Carolina Boulevard. The second being 2nd Avenue between Charleston Boulevard between 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue, largely due to a crush pipe disconnecting it from the remainder of its system along its major trunk line down 2nd Avenue. An area along 4th Avenue and Merritt Boulevard. An area along 6th Avenue between 6th and 7th Avenue along Ocean Boulevard. An area along 19th Avenue and Myrtle. An area at 21st and Waterway. A location at the end of 25th Avenue, just north of Waterway Boulevard, as well as Driftwood Lane and Waterway Boulevard. What's represented on here is largely due to storm surge flooding, high water elevations from storm surges or king tides working its way back into the stormwater drainage networks and either impeding the ability to convey water out and away from the island, or actually in extreme cases having inlets surcharge tidal water that is crept up into these systems. So we took a look. I'm going to go ahead and show you 2 of the conceptual designs that we've actually.
Could you go back to the last slide?
Yes,
Is that the whole island or is that missing Wild Dunes,
this is just the phase 4 drainage area.
which goes from
29th
Breach.
Avenue to Breach Inlet. We actually expand a little bit past 29th Avenue in our analysis, just based on watersheds don't exactly like to obey street lines.
okay,
So
Okay.
anywhere where the water flowed into the phase 4 area, we went ahead and included in our
okay,
analysis.
but it does not include the entire island that you're showing us.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, our scope was limited to the phase 4 area
That's
for
fine.
this in-depth analysis. So one of the conceptual solutions, which is actually, I guess was actually started today, was the area identified north of Waterway Boulevard along 25th Avenue. This is a very low-lying area, which is extremely subject to storm surge flooding. So what we've recommended is the installation of an earthen embankment to keep the water from coming in, as well as the installation of tide gates on the 25th Avenue outfall to keep water from coming into the system and spilling out of those drainage ditches along 25th Avenue. That's just a little graphic of how the tide gate's going to work. It's just going to allow all of the water coming into the system downstream to head out to the ocean, and then as the tide comes in, it's going to prevent any backflow.
Okay, can you describe 25th Avenue? It's from where to where that you're talking about?
25th Avenue, we're primarily working on the area north of Waterway Boulevard right now.
The very end of 25th.
Yeah,
25th to the intercoastal. Okay.
and I'll let Ryan describe the work that's going on right now.
Yeah, that's going, you're working there today, weren't you? Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
pictures from today.
Yeah, so actually Robert was ahead of us on this one. So the city actually already knew they had a big problem with tidal backflow. And so they were actually really good and proactive about going ahead and ordering these check valves. The prices jacked up July, so we actually gave them a list of all locations where these would be really good, a no regret measure. You're not going to waste any money. You can go ahead and put this in. So they went ahead and ordered a lot of those. But this is actually on the left. It's actually some of our friends at DOT that pitched in and helped fund a part of this project. Now they're only installing the pipes and the check valves. I actually got some injuries from installing a check valve with Douglas this morning. But so the earthen embankment that we were showing here, this area in green, that's something that would still need to be considered and work with those property owners. That's really going to be more from like a Hurricane Matthew or an Irma, so a hurricane event. But the check valves and the upgraded pipes will definitely help during king tides. You're not going to have any water backflowing into the island. And then actually those ditches will be able to drain out and have storage volume. So when it does rain, there'll be somewhere for the water to go. So that was today, this morning. So bottom right's Robert and his skid steer. So
And Ryan, this is supposed to be finished pre-storm, right? I mean,
It should
tomorrow,
be.
next day.
today,
It won't be.
ideally.
But,
somewhere.
but in the next day or two, this is gonna be done.
We'll be able to test it out in the next
Right.
coming days.
Are we piping all the way back to Waterway?
No,
Just there, just sealing the edge and that's it.
Yeah, just the pipe, 20-foot stick of pipe. They actually put two 36-inch pipes in that ditch right at the very end, right where you get to the waterway. Or the intercoastal. I guess since I'm here, I'll keep talking. Just wanted to show quickly, I know we mentioned the skip application. That was the ARPA money that the governor signed in and gave to RIA. RIA is going to be administering that. So there's a couple of different things on the island. Like Aaron mentioned, there's areas that have drainage infrastructure. And we think those will be areas where we can easily upfit or add additional drainage. So those are cheaper solutions. So what we wanted to do is take a really good, at least bat at swing for the fences and get as much money as we could from RIA. So we thought 6th and 7th, there is no drainage infrastructure there today. There's nothing really. The only option would be to put in some type of infiltration technology or pipe and add a new outfall to the intercoastal waterway. And we all thought just with permitting, it would be easier. Let's try to utilize the beach access and put in some infiltration technology. And since they're just passing out money, why not try to get some of that and fix it? So that was a solution we presented for 6th and 7th. I know there's been some questions about that particular area. Again, that was just an area where heavy flooding during extreme events. So it is sandy, which is good. It doesn't stand there long. But again, we thought it'd be a good opportunity just to get as much money as we can. Another area is Charleston Boulevard. We've got a conceptual solution there. That one's going to be a little more complicated, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to get funding for that here in the next couple of months. And this is just a graphic showing some of the flooding. The dashed red is the contributing drainage area. So all the water that falls within that area eventually makes its way down to an unlucky resident there on 6th and 7th. So again, targeting extreme events for this particular area, but we are focusing on other areas with kind of minor solutions. This is just showing some of the infiltration trenches. It's just a plastic HDPE pipe pretty much cut in half. You backfill it with stone. And as long as you have sandy soils underneath, you can just get all that water, put it in there, and it just infiltrates into the ground. So a few folks were at the beach conference. There's some communities in North Carolina that are starting to do this.
it's just a great way to take advantage of sandy soils.
And you're doing that under the dunes?
Under the dunes, but back from the setback. So we're not crossing into the beach or anything, but it would be pretty much in the beach access.
Okay.
So we'd excavate, put this in, put it back and revegetate everything.
And it'll look just like a dune that's
Yes,
there
ma'am.
now.
And Ryan, how's the effectiveness been on some of the installations we've seen in North Carolina so far?
Say that one more time.
How's the effectiveness been of this design in some of the beach areas of North Carolina that you mentioned?
It's working. So ADS is actually the manufacturer of these chamber systems. We actually met with them this past summer. They've been monitoring those sites and they seem to be working great. So we've actually, the city's put some of that technology in the comprehensive plan just as a long-term solution. Some opportunities there instead of just ripping up roads and putting in pipe. And there are places you'll still have to do that. But if, you know, this is a little less invasive process.
And just to clarify, Ms. Jan, this is not going to be along the dune, it's along the beach access path.
So it'll be vertical to the, perpendicular to the ocean?
Perpendicular to the,
Oh,
in line with a house. If you think of a row of
Okay.
houses, this will be in the beach access, kind of in line, no farther seaward than the adjacent houses would be or are.
And this is just in that phase 4 area. Are there other areas in the rest of the island that y'all are looking at doing similar things?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
So
am I getting ahead of myself?
yeah, this is just an overall map of phase 4 is on the left. Phase 3 is really seems to be the problem area, forest trails and some other locations. So we're actually working with the city. We've gotten lists from the city, Robert and his staff, of all of the hotspots, nuisance flooding. And we're going to be looking at easy fixes. Again, no regret measures, not going to be a waste of money, something you can do very quick. Might be as simple as just putting in an inlet, piping over to an existing inlet. I know there's some areas along Palmetto Boulevard towards Wild Dunes. We've been talking with them that we can fix those, but that is the next step. So we're wrapping up phase 4 now. And then we'll be stepping back and identifying all these other locations. And ultimately we'll have a list of a solution, a price, and a potential funding source, whether it's internal, city fund, hospitality tax, RIA, IIJA is out. Everyone's heard of that. There's a lot of new funding, especially for coastal communities. So we'll be looking at things like that. And the infiltration systems are, you know, somewhat green infrastructure. It's a little more innovative. So it checks a lot of boxes too for being able to get additional funding that you may not be able to get or historically have gotten.
on that map, go back. Which of those dots would be covered with this project that you're talking about with the infiltration system? Which of those would be remedied by that?
So
Just-
Charleston Boulevard, at 4th Avenue, 6th and 7th.
Mhm.
These are part of the SKIP application.
Okay.
And then actually 9th Avenue is another particular location. There is no drainage infrastructure right at the beach access, but we really want to get one in the ground, make sure that it works, and then do it more. We don't want to just go across the entire island and start putting in things until we can actually implement it, monitor it, and just see how it goes.
So there'll be 2 more dots on the back of the island that are not addressed yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So these are just examples of some of those hot spots in the phase 4 area. Again, some are worse than others,
Phase 3.
or phase 3, excuse me. So, you know, there may be opportunities along the right of way, especially Isle of Palms has really large right of ways, which is nice because you have some space to actually install infrastructure. So we'll be looking at those, and again, just coming up with some conceptual solutions, order of magnitude costs, and put it all in a nice package and hopefully let Desiree solve all the flooding problems. see. Might be technologically challenged here.
They're
Okay. So again, just to recap, we're wrapping up the phase 4 master plan. That's the really in-depth study. We did get a little sidetracked trying to help the city on an application for the South Carolina Infrastructure and Investment Program, which is SKIP. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. I was talking with Rusty and some folks earlier. With the construction markets being a little insane right now, we went ahead and asked for probably more money than we need. But the intent will be, hopefully, we've got some excess funds and we can implement those solutions and then do some other things with those monies. We're actually wrapping up all the cost estimating for the phase 3 area, including the major projects and minor. And then just last week, Robert sent over a lot of the hotspot areas in the phase 4 Forest Trails area. So we're starting to look at those. We're actually looking at a few of those this morning. And then really the last two that I will quickly mention, we have been talking with a few residents on development standards. So we are actually being tasked with reviewing those standards in relation to stormwater management and really just working with city staff to see what we can do. Maybe everything's in place, but just second set eyes on that. And then the maintenance program, looking at things that Edie's is working on now with some of their maintenance. Are there other opportunities to make that more efficient or more cost effective, both in terms of just practices and actual implementation of the cleaning procedures, looking at different machinery and options there to clean out pipelines and ditches. So lots of fun stuff.
Can you explain what development regulation review means?
So what we're hoping to do, there's been a lot of residents that are worried and may have some issues with new development, a newer house coming in. You've got a small house, a big lot, and all of a sudden you have a massive house with not so much lot anymore. And all of a sudden the runoff from that house may impact the other property. And so what we're looking at doing is trying to come up with some tools for the city and the developers and the builders to be able to easily put in some numbers and actually come up with a method to mitigate their runoff. So it might be lot coverage. Maybe you need to limit the amount of impervious area. It might be the ratio of their impervious area to the pervious area. So making sure there's not too much roof area relative to the lot. It could be actually maintaining the runoff on site. So if they generate more runoff, maybe they need to actually maintain that on site and not let it actually go off to other properties. So we're really just looking at any and everything to try to make that process easy for the city to review, but also make it effective in terms of not causing flooding of other properties with larger houses and development. Now, the commercial properties aren't really an issue. They have to follow much more stringent standards with Charleston County. It's really the residential housing, and the city doesn't have an engineer, so we're trying to come up with some tools and things that they can use so they don't have to go out and hire an engineer every time, or just completely rely on the builders for their design. Hopefully that answered your
Yes,
question.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Jan?
We're new to council, so forgive me, but I've never seen an existing conditions map of where we do have drainage structure on the island.
Okay.
You must have that, right?
Yes, ma'am. So we do have that. And the city, we've given them all the data we've collected. So they have that in a form that's useful to them. And I'll show you quickly. So this is actually some of our exhibits for phase 4. So again, just showing pipes, the size of the pipes, the elevations and the conditions. So we have both paper form and digital forms, Google Earth files. You could view all of it if you wanted to. And then the city also has some GIS systems that they use internally to view and access that data.
Okay. All right,
So we're not blindly,
well, we're blindly, right now, we're being asked to act on projects when we don't see the big picture. That's why you're here today. So this will be a good first step. The second thing, I'm a little confused over what you said, because you're talking about phase 4 and phase 3. And phase 4, I thought, was the end of the island by Breach Inlet,
yes, ma'am.
but then you started talking about, is Forest Trails part of that as well?
Yes, ma'am. So,
Phase three.
yeah, phase 3.
That's phase 3, okay,
3 comes after 4. I think that's why it's.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
let me pull up a map. Too many numbers. So phase 3,
Okay,
Forest Trails area, and then 29th the breach is phase 4.
okay, so the phase is not, I mean, it's part 1, 2, 3, and 4 sort of thing is what you're talking.
Yes,
about.
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay,
So Jan, the city started really working on infrastructure projects right outside of Wild Dunes.
First major project. And we just called that phase 1. Then we went to
Between 42nd, I'm sorry, 44th and 53rd, that was phase 2. So we have just sequentially worked our way down the island, starting right
outside of Wild Dunes Gate, working toward Breach Inlet. So that's the reason we've always called it phase 1, 2, 3, and 4.
okay,
It's just the sequence that the city did the project.
Yeah, so one and 2 are the 2 boxes to the right of that
Correct.
map.
Far right, that's 1 and 2.
Okay. And the 41st Avenue one we're doing now is
Phase 3.
phase 3.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and more to come in that area, phase 3.
Yes, and Thompson Hutton is doing that. They're working on the design and construction. They have actually done an assessment for the phase 3 area as well. We're just gonna take that and put a second set of eyes on it. And then also just work with city staff based on actual observations and come up with recommendations.
Okay. What is the schedule, I guess, to complete your part of the study, I guess, so that we have a map, I mean, an idea of what the whole master plan is going to be?
The intent is to finish everything the end of the year.
Okay,
And what I was thinking actually is we can set up a web portal for council, residents, anyone to be able to actually drop a pin, drop a point where there's flooding. You can upload a picture and actually send in some information about the flooding, if there was damage, if it was in your yard, if it was a street. So we're actually thinking about, we can put that on the city's website, and then y'all can actually tell residents, hey, if you have flooding, go to the website, upload your photos, and we can use that too. Because I live right around the corner, but I don't live on the island, so I don't see everything. So we really rely on citizens and city staff to help us. We're only one piece of the puzzle.
okay.
That would
That
be
is
helpful.
something that you are gonna do?
Yes, we're actually talking about that earlier. I think that'd be very helpful.
I got lots of pictures.
Send them all to us.
And just to complete it, we have some other phase 3 projects that are ongoing, is that correct? 30th Avenue,
36.
36.
That's correct.
Phase 3.
41st, 25th, which is
That
sort
was
of
an add-on.
add-on.
Yeah, 25th was a separate project, but you're correct. The outfall projects that we're working on today are part of the phase 3. And
Okay.
there are some additional smaller projects within the basin that Thomas and Hutton identified. They're smaller, minor improvement projects that we'll be continuing to work on.
Okay, good. Thank you.
34th and Forest Trails is another one. That's one we actually looked at this morning. We know there's a lot of flooding in that area, so that's one we're currently trying to spearhead.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Douglas, anything else? Dan? You good? Ryan, thank you guys for your help.
Thank y'all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good work.
Mr. Mayor, this time I'd like to suspend the rules, make a motion to suspend the rules of order to consider new business 6B on the agenda.
See how engaged they were. You think they don't want to?
Well,
Second.
Kind of like a game of football. Second half, nobody's there. Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Item 6B is consideration of recommendation from the ATAX committee to award a $30,000 grant to the VFW for the replacement of the elevator.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
So just for context, and this was mentioned earlier, so last year there was a $15,000 grant to work on the Patriots walkway. Is that the right term? Which is the sidewalk and kind of the courtyard where anybody can use and reflect and get to the beach or kind of whatever they want to do there. And it was a great improvement to that particular area. So VFW is back to ask for the elevator piece. So questions or comments or?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules of order to ask representatives from the VFW 3137 some questions and getting some more information if possible. Yeah. Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Buddy, you want to just come back up and we can ask questions as needed?
Yeah, well, a couple of things that I think may be relevant, especially to me, is Mr. Page had mentioned some numbers about people coming from over the island, especially Afghan veterans that come and visit. And there were some numbers that he had mentioned, and they come to the VFW and they need an elevator to access.
What I was saying is, Buddy had mentioned that we have 4,000 people a year coming up. We have 4,000 people every summer on our walkway going to the access to the beach.
Okay.
Right. We have 4,000 people a year who come to our facility and use it. And they may use the elevator, they may use the stairwell, and our elevator is broken. It can't be repaired. We've been told that in the last year and a half, we've had 6 times the fire departments had to come help us get people out of the elevator.
So the 30,000 isn't the full cost. Is that correct?
No, it isn't. We've committed the balance, which I believe is
The total cost of the elevator is $42,000. And the money that we spent on the Patriots courtyard and the access for the public, even though that's private property, but that's what we wanted to do, was already at 60,000. So for the elevator, we have already made the commitment up front and before we ask for anything. And that's for the people that, as I mentioned earlier, that need the safe and convenient access to the post. But as you know, like all the other buildings, we're elevated and we have an aging population. And to get back on that amount of visitors, we have 1,200 war veterans. And I happen to be a Vietnam veteran. And we have another 600 auxiliary members. Of all those people, especially the comrades, only 80 of them live on the island. We have veterans, members that come from all over the United States. We feel like we're a destination and we want to be able to serve all the people that come and spend the night and eat here and shop here. So that's why we're looking at our priorities. And we felt access with that, because the other sidewalk was not safe. A lot of areas and the elevator, more and more people need that. So as I mentioned earlier, our mission is to support our active duty, our veterans, and our community. So
Just a couple more quick points, and I'll be through. I'm sorry, Rusty, but Desiree, have you looked into the validity of this request, and does it pass all the guidelines or laid out by ATAX, state ATAX?
Well, that is an assessment that the tourism expenditure review committee will make.
Right.
We look at the letter of the law, and in state law where it defines tourism related expenditures, which is what is eligible to receive ATAX funding, it includes, and I'm going to quote from the state statute, construction, maintenance, and operations of facilities for civic and cultural activities, including construction and maintenance of access and other nearby roads and utilities for the facilities.
Okay, great. One last thing, and I appreciate y'all's patience with me. I'm a veteran. I'm not eligible to be a member of the VFW, but I was in the Coast Guard during the Vietnam era. But I had to sign a blank check, just like everybody that's a veteran. And it was made payable to the United States of America. And the amount was up to and including my life. So I understand that pledge, and I have great respect for all of our veterans. And I just appreciate you coming forward and talking with us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Rusty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have the opportunity, just as most islanders do, to get down there on Front Beach quite a bit. So I've definitely seen the traffic that you have between the Windjammer area, your area, and the people that go through there. And also some of the, I think, admiration that people are expressing because you beautified the courtyard there. And the way that looks, I mean, it's certainly a huge improvement from what we had before. And I think the city last year kind of helped you with that project as well, if I understand correctly. I'm also looking at I think it's 11 pages of your sign-in sheet that you posted here. And this is really just for the month of August. And I'm assuming it's this year for the month of August. I'm not real sure, but in those 11 pages, just a quick scan on my part, certainly not, I didn't count the heads basically, but a significant number of these people are from areas that would be more than just a day trip. They're not just locals. I mean, we're seeing Madison, Wisconsin, Mechanicsburg, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, quite a few times. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Frederick, Maryland, Oregon, Eureka, Wisconsin. So it tells me that you are really, as the post on the coast, you are attracting some people from away. And I'm assuming somebody from Wisconsin is staying overnight or multiple nights.
Yeah, that's one of our points.
Yeah.
And we do attract a lot of memberships from all over the country. And we feel that we are a destination, as we mentioned earlier. We want to support those people, not only those folks, but we just had one of our fish fries, and we had well over, well, we sold like 85 meals, and some of them were 2 and 3 people, and then people come in. So that's open to the public. So we like to share our post. And Jimmy, I think you said about being a veteran, but a lot of our membership, not only just the comrades who serve, but our auxiliary, we get a tremendous amount of support for the community on the programs that we talked about earlier about our mission. And we take that very seriously.
And one other thing, just to finish, Mr. Mayor, kind of my final comment here is that I'm not a member of the VFW, but I think I could be because my dad was a World War II veteran in the Pacific Theater, serving in the Navy. And I've just been remiss in not getting his DD 214 and putting an application in. But I will have to tell you, I've had the pleasure of being a guest there many times, and there's no more cordial and friendly and welcoming group than I've ever seen on this island than all the members and the patrons of the VFW. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm an auxiliary member because my father was a World War II vet. I also want to back to the courtyard and the walkway that we did last year. It's now permeable. It doesn't flood anymore. When it rained really hard, you'd walk through there basically side by side. It was 4 feet wide. It's now 8 feet wide, so people can walk hand in hand. They can push their strollers through, and it's a much safer area and a much cleaner area. And I really feel like that the permeability of the thing, allowing the water to go through, has helped it quite a bit too.
Yeah, our current post commander, Bo, a lot of you know Bo Stallings, and he's also a contractor, and the courtyard and the drainage were great. We had 1 or 2 places that we had to tweak, and we took care of that. So it's really functional.
All right, Kevin.
And did you say it was the pathway, the walkway, the access was 60,000 that you totally spent? Of which
It was over. It was like
donated
62
15.
or 63.
So in a way, this could help with that as well.
Yeah.
Also, for people who haven't been to the V, everything is on the second floor. I mean, the bathrooms, everything. So you have to get people up to the second floor.
Right, correct.
Jan,
How much of that $60,000 was our contribution to it? 15,
Yes.
15 of the 60. Okay,
And again, we made that commitment up front.
okay, and that was,
That any assurances for anything.
okay, and that is a public space that's open to the public at all times.
Oh, yeah. we use
Okay.
it. For every one comrade or member that comes in there, there are probably 40 or more people that come
Right.
by there. So it's used way more by the public than it is by the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the VFW is a membership organization. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think y'all do wonderful work. I thank our veterans every day for our safe and secure country. What I'm concerned with is that we treat all of our organizations on the island equally. And I think the Exchange Club came to us last year for help with building their bulkhead and weren't turned down for it by us. Is that correct? I think.
I mean, they never did a formal application. but-
Okay, but they were told that it probably wouldn't meet the requirements kind of thing. And so my concern is that if their membership organization too, many of us belong to it, and we are open to guests. But if we're treating one with that kind of information and another with yours, if it's not a public access application, I'm just a little concerned that we're really sort of overstepping that bound between public use and private use with an elevator to your clubhouse rather than for the public to use. I just want to put that out there. The other thing is, I think that Desiree is the fund that this is coming out of, what's the amount in it every year?
The city budgets $50,000 every year for programs and sponsorships that are considered by the ATAX committee and approved by the city council.
Okay,
The city has already awarded a $10,000 grant to the Chamber of Commerce a couple months ago. So we have $40,000 in the current fund for such programs or sponsorships.
for the year that ends next June, July?
June 30, 2023.
Okay, so this would be the bulk of the rest of the money in that fund would go to this one organization. So I think we need to take that into consideration when we decide how we want to treat this.
And Desiree, when you were reading the ATAX code or whatever, if you will, it talks about civic, cultural. I mean, there's no distinction around public, private in the code, right?
No, it just says civic and cultural activity.
Gotcha.
Can I,
Yeah, George.
I know this is a large request. I can't imagine us actually looking at or asking for that amount again, because it is such an urgent need in our facility for an elevator that come over and look at it. It's an old screw type elevator. They don't even make the type thing anymore. And that's why the request was so large. Plus, we're not aware of how much money is offered. And, I didn't know there was a budget or how much they give out. It was a request that we talked about and said, well, we'll shoot for the moon. And
Sure.
and that's what we did.
No problem.
Scott.
And our
I would like to also stick back to the Exchange Club. We partnered with them on building the new dock and stuff, and we support a lot of other things before we ever ask for money, ever. We do a lot of community. We're the #1 post in the state of South Carolina. We're number 285 out of 6,000 posts in the United States. We've received All-American awards for 6 years in a row, which, like I say, 285 out of 6,000 something posts. We do a lot of community service, the VA hospital, the Fisher House, multiple things. We are a nonprofit. We do not make a bunch of money. We give money away. I mean, we give away lots of money, but it also takes a lot to keep up this post in this environment we have. And our walkway is our private property, but we have given it basically to the city so that people can access that beach in that, and a lot of people use this. So
Yeah,
I'm just saying, we're not.
No, like I said, for every one person that goes to that post, probably 50 are
Use our walkway.
visitors for residents, and we're happy to do it. But we just want to make sure it's safe and convenient, and with our population, we just need that elevator. And as I said, we committed up front, and as our commander said, we step up for the Exchange Club because they're good partners with us. We do a lot with them, and to mention all the other local, it goes back to our mission. It's all exactly.
As a Coast Guard veteran, we also adopted the the Coast Guard ship James. So Jimmy, I'd like you to know that. And also the junior ROTC at the new Beckman High School. We're supporting them. It's a Coast Guard junior ROTC, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Scott.
I think one of the distinctions might be the public access to the beach. It sounds like the VFW does provide a lot of public access. I'm not sure how much public access. I'm a member of the Exchange Club as well. And I know that they allow public access to use the parking lot and things of that nature, but perhaps the best advice to the Exchange Club is to submit the application and to see what happens. Yeah.
Other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll back up to item 4, approval of previous meetings minutes. We have city council regular meeting, August 23rd, special personnel meeting, August 30th, and special council meeting on September 13th. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Thank
I have one
you.
change.
Let me get a second.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Changes, edits?
The special personnel committee meeting on 9 a.m. Tuesday, August 30th, I think. I'd like to add. I think that's the one. No, excuse me, it's the September 13th meeting. Special city council meeting, September 13th. On page 11 of my printout, I wanted to add a statement. I can either just submit it or just read it.
Both.
Okay. It's in a discussion about the shared parking and private parking layout, new layouts for the with the restaurant. There's one sentence about what I was discussing with, I think, the restaurant owner. I'd just like it to say, Councilmember Anderson indicated that there were 3 alternative parking layouts. The first 2 are similar, except that the lot entrances move farther from the boat ramp at Mr. Bushnell's request. Mr. Bushnell then prepared a 3rd plan that favors the restaurant to the detriment of the city. Mr. Bushnell wants to maximize parking while IOP wants a usable park. In her opinion, either of the first 2 plans would be acceptable for the city.
Yes. All right, Rusty.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The change that I would note is, I think on page 11 of the special city council meetings, 9/13. We had after the the postponement vote that we had for ordinance 2022-04 and 2022-05. Then we had a motion by Councilmember Hahn to approve 2022-04 and 2202-05, and I seconded that motion. Then we ended up having a lot of discussion about parking, about lease on the restaurant, that sort of thing. So by the time we got back on the subject, I made a motion to approve ordinance 2022-04 and 2022-05, and then Councilmember Popson seconded the motion. So it looks like we had a double motion and second for that.
I have to tell you that was a really
Possible.
hard set of minutes.
I know,
to do.
I'm just kind of.
I know, and
So
mean,
anyway, we're like, I don't know if that's
I
an
will-
asterisk that we make.
I will double check that.
Uh-huh,
I'll go back and listen to it again. That was a very hard set of minutes. to do.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not making an excuse for poor work, but I
right,
okay.
okay,
will go look to make sure that it's correct. It was confusing.
thank you so much.
Harder than usual.
Yes, sir. Much harder than usual.
Any other changes or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 5, old business A, discussion and consideration of entering into an automatic aid agreement with Mount Pleasant for fire protection. We've talked about this a couple of months worth in workshop and council. So if there's a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Desiree or Chief, anything to add here?
Yes, I'll let Chief give you a couple of points, but I did want to clarify for the record that the automatic aid agreement would be with the town of Mount Pleasant. But we also want to know that it would include the city of Charleston, North Charleston, James Island, Johns Island, St. Andrews. This is a complete regional automatic aid agreement that would be inclusive of all those communities. So the chief will talk about how we've mentioned this before, how moving in this direction for a pilot period of 12 months, starting January 1st, 2023, would dramatically enhance our capability to respond to emergencies by allowing us the opportunity to utilize staff from other departments and resources from other departments, and also enhance our personnel as well. So, Chief.
Absolutely. Any questions you have, I'd be more than happy to answer it, but yes, that is correct. Everything that Ms. Desiree Fregoso noted with the automatic aid. It's a wonderful opportunity for us. We have been training for this since, in anticipation of this, since late June or early July, when we started talking about it as a staff, looking at the data. Talking to other departments. I reached out to each fire chief in the group individually, both in person and then via email, and forwarded that information to Ms. Fregoso, and they all support us coming on board. They're very excited about the opportunity, talking to the fire chiefs at all those respective departments. And to Ms. Fregoso's point, there is a lot of opportunity where we can enhance our skills through training, through leveraging economy of scale and resource sharing that are kind of hard to put data points on, but those are real benefits that we will see here on Isle of Palms.
Yeah, motion and second. Questions or comments for Chief?
I wanted to make 2 points. The chief will be scheduling a public meeting very soon, so that we can talk to members of the community who may have some questions and help them understand what this means when it comes to service delivery from our fire department. And also I wanted to point out that according to the agreement, you'll have the current agreement in your packets. The city is able to withdraw from that at any time, unilaterally. So if it so happens that, the potential challenges are just too much for us to mitigate or to manage, which we don't anticipate they will, but we still have that opportunity to do that, and just revert back to our mutual aid agreement with Mount Pleasant and step out of the automatic aid if we so choose, if we decide that that's the best thing for our department and our community.
Jan, sorry, John.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you estimated that the number of calls we'd be doing, I've read somewhere it's like 250 round number a year. And I think it'd be good to, part of the monthly metrics that we do is to, assuming this passes, is that we start to monitor and track how many of those calls and the nature of those calls as we can look at monthly. I think it's a good way to kind of analyze it every month as we go through this trial period.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I should have mentioned that, but that is part of our process. And thank you for mentioning that. So we will bring that data to you as far as frequency, the amount and the call type as well. We'll be able to do that. So absolutely, that'll be part of our 12-month evaluation process. And thank you for mentioning that. That's absolutely imperative that we do that, because that's how we're going to measure the effectiveness. And also our after action reports, we'll be able to do that as well.
Jane.
I think this is a great idea because it maximizes our access to emergency facilities without us having to pay enormous amounts for it or have redundancies, especially in the case of a major fire here on the island. We will automatically know that we are covered. So I definitely think it's a great idea.
Questions? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chief, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
Item 5B, Blair, you had asked to have this on, discussion about hiring a consultant to develop conceptual design alternatives for Palm Boulevard between 21st and 41st that accommodates parking, bike path, and emergency lane. Just real quick by way of background, if you're all right. So the city looked at this before it latest was in 2013. Council had contracted with Stan Tech to create parking strategies for the city. Two of the slides were actually in your packet that showed kind of a before and after of Palm Boulevard, this whole grand Palm Boulevard idea, given the wide right of way. And that was just one example that they came up with of what we could do with Palm and the whole right of way that sits there. In our ongoing discussions with SCDOT, Secretary Hall has agreed to engage their consultants and develop and provide alternatives for Palm Boulevard and willing to pay for those concept about designs. And that work, as you know, they're in the middle of the connector study right now. So that work would probably begin later this year, first part of next year from a design standpoint. So just for that background. So Blair, I don't know what you wanted to add or questions or thoughts. Yeah.
And thank you, Mayor. My only concern is that Palm Boulevard between 21st and 41st Avenue is just not safe right now. We've got cars backing into traffic. We've got cars doing U-turns. We've got people walking down the street. We've got golf carts and bicycles in the middle of the street. We don't have an emergency lane. It's just not safe. It's not safe for the residents. It's not safe for the visitors. We have heard from our police chief that if we have a dedicated bicycle lane and a dedicated golf cart path, that those vehicles will not be able to use Palm Boulevard. I think they need to get out of Palm Boulevard and get on a designated street. And we need to make a place that is safe for everybody unloading their cars, going to their cars, excited children, dogs, and people that have been overindulged all need to be safe as they use Palm Boulevard. And to do that, we have to have a proper study done.
I think I'm looking at the Stantec version from 2013. It actually doesn't have an emergency lane, but has parking, bike, and then a lane on either side.
Yeah, I mean, and
Maybe
I don't,
that's just one example.
I know, and I may not understand exactly what that study did, but it is showing a bike path in between two traffic paths. That doesn't seem to me to be particularly safe.
John.
Well, I think that's just a conceptual that's
Yeah.
very dated. It's going on 10 years old. I think the intent, I just want to repeat, I think what I heard the mayor and what I've heard before is that Secretary Hall has agreed to look at the redesign of Palm Boulevard and to fund the conceptual design, not the engineering design, but come forward with conceptual designs, alternatives of what that right of way, 100-foot right of way could look like. And so I think that's what the next step is to get those conceptual designs so that then we can look at it and then talk to DOT about what options and them funding the entire project in some way. But I think that's the next step. And I think a sense of urgency around it would be great. I think the next discussions anybody has with Secretary Hall, we can get an update, Desiree, and maybe find out where they are and what the timeline is on that, and maybe bring that to a workshop is a good idea.
Yeah, they're currently negotiating with RK&K, which is the consultant that we're currently working with the connector study to change their scope to include this component. That hasn't yet been executed, but I think they're trying to pile on other projects with the same company. But I had a meeting with them last week and we talked about this, conveying to them, our concerns with pedestrians, with golf carts and, everything that we see happening all the time at Palm Boulevard and wanting to see alternatives developed that address that while maintaining parking and access.
Yeah, because the safety is, I definitely am concerned with Blair's talking about the safety of Palm Boulevard, but it also aesthetically does not look good. And those I don't, there was some talk about the parallel parking and the parking markers to redo those, and we've kind of lost sight of that. But aesthetically, it just doesn't look well right either.
And I guess anticipating, Blair, where you're headed probably. I mean, if we had the urgency and wanted to go find a consultant, I don't know what kind of timing that would be. I know it's teed up right now with the SCDOT consultant. They're lined up, they're here and they're kind of lined up to kind of take the next step. I guess where I'm headed is is that moving about as fast as we could go get a private consultant to come up, either Stan Tech or somebody else to update what's on the books already, or?
I mean,
don't know the answer to that question.
Just looking at the timeline, we're looking at 60 to 90 days before we can even have somebody engaged. This would be something that would have to prepare a request for proposals, interview several firms, and then make a selection. Additionally, it's not a budgeted item. Council can certainly make approve an out of budget expenditure. But I'm just knowing how sort of the process works, I would guesstimate 60 to 90 days.
Go ahead, Kate.
I think it would be worth it to try to get somebody to do this for us, as quickly as possible. To have a second opinion, and somebody who's looking at it from the perspective and with a real focus on safety, because it is insanely dangerous driving down Palm Boulevard. Talk to numerous people who have young drivers and they tell them, don't even go Palm. Like, it's not worth it because there's small children running out in front of cars all the time. So I think that we need to get this moving. And if we could get our own consultant to give us their opinion, and that way we'd have two options possibly if DOT got around to doing it. I mean, it is their road, so they should be the ones to be concerned about the safety of the road. But I think we need to try to do that on our own also, in case it doesn't happen from their side.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it's not just their road. It's our road as well. It's inside our city limits, and the safety.
It's their responsibility.
Yeah, the safety of that road is our responsibility. We need to step up. Whether we do that with a full consultant or we do that with a consultant that's overseeing, I don't know, but we need to do something.
Jan and Jimmy.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend that we use the same process that we're using for the connector road, where we have our own consultant who meets with the DOT and other interested parties to oversee the work and provide as a liaison with us, but input also to that project. It's worked well with us so far.
Like to look at the funds. I remember all of this from 2013, and I'll have to go back. I keep most of my stuff. Might get some help from Desiree. If I remember, it was a lot of money, a lot that we paid for all this stuff. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
And
Get Jan, Rusty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Desiree, a question to you. Do we have any sort of estimate of time that DOT is going to get back with you on some of the recommendations here, that not only with the connector, but also how we may look at doing something different here on Palm Boulevard? I mean, have they indicated any time certain?
Well, the presentation about the alternatives for the connector is being scheduled for November 15th. That's something that I know the mayor will speak to you all about as we schedule the meetings for the next couple of months. The last week they indicated that they're negotiating the change order to the existing consultant contract. I do not have a timeline on when that would be resolved. It did, based on our conversation, it did not sound like it would be longer, but I don't know, however worth is that. I don't know what I don't know if that's worth anything, but I would expect a couple more weeks before they finalize that and they can start working on it. It is the same consultant, so I don't anticipate them doing any work on the 21st to 41st Avenue work until the connector study is complete, which should be by November.
All right. Well, I tend to agree with Council Member Myers, Anderson, and Hahn, and that it's our street, it's our road. I mean, I know that DOT has control over it, but from a safety standpoint, I've lived out there for close to 40 years in that area, and I've seen the dangers that road has, basically, with children and otherwise. And really, for a beach community, it's unsightly. Let's put it that way. I mean, it really could be beautified, certainly. So I would be in favor of us at least going down the road to look at some sort of consultant on our part to collaborate with SCDOT in the city and start moving this thing along a little bit quicker here.
And Blair, what's your reaction to using our current consultant that's kind of overseeing the connector study and
I think that-
overseeing the SCDOT.
Yeah, that'd be fine. We just need our player at the
I'm
table.
with you.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Scott,
So the discussion is for us to be hiring our own consultant or to support the efforts with SCDOT.
either or, but I think what I'm hearing is the model that we've got in place with the connector oversight with our current consultant is let's replicate that on the Palm
So
Boulevard.
so our consultant would be more of a lot less expensive than us doing our own.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
I could support that. I think, yeah, I think if SCDOT is offering to do this on our behalf, I think we should take them up on it.
But to Blair's point, have our person at the
Yeah,
table with us
understood.
on our dime to oversight it.
And if they're doing a bad job, then we can hire somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe there's money in the budget too for some traffic engineering services already. So this would not be a new budget item.
Yes, we have additional funds we increase that number for the connector study, knowing that it'll be happening throughout this year. So I feel confident that the funds that we have under professional services would be sufficient to cover the additional work that Jennifer Bill would do on behalf of us for this project.
Okay.
And if not, I will be coming before you all to,
Okay.
yeah, with a request.
And one last question, not to forget the connector study, the retiming of the signals along the connector. That's still in the works too.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got the restriping of the connector, retiming the signals along the connector, and now we're adding an analysis of Palm Boulevard as well, all sponsored by SCDOT. So I think we're finally getting some attention from them and notice. Thank you.
Staff clear.
Yes, sir.
Blair, thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, item 5C, Rusty, you had asked to have this on, update on efforts to install an elevator in the new Marina restaurant. Just again, way of background, this is a follow-up to a motion from the council last fall, which tasked the city to continue to work with the restaurant owners to explore alternatives. So I know there have been a meeting or two. Desiree, you wanna, or Douglas,
Yep,
provide an update?
I'll speak to this. The city staff met with the restaurant owners down there, and we also engaged Trident Construction, who is the group we used to redo the public safety building when we did that project. We had Trident there. Trident brought two of their elevator representatives that they work with frequently. We had a good meeting on the site. We kind of toured the facility, looked at options that would allow for an elevator. We think that we identified probably the best location that would meet kind of everybody's criteria for constructability and functionality. And I would say that it was still slightly an awkward positioning. It would be to the right of the door. It would be in their walkway. It would take up a big chunk of their lower deck. It would lead to the upper deck, and it would kind of be an awkward entrance in there. So, but it did sound to us like it could be done, like it was feasible to be built that way. The marina representatives, I'm sorry, the restaurant representatives asked that we give them a couple of weeks to react to that from a functionality standpoint, whether or not, whether they can live with it really at the end of the day. So they're doing that now. I think we met last week. They said within a few weeks, they would be back in touch with us. And we also are waiting for information from Trident on what it would take, the cost to do that. So they were going to work through how, just conceptually, not a detailed quote or anything of that magnitude, but a concept of what it would take. So once we get that information back from the restaurant group and from Trident, that tells us if it can be done, and if so, if the restaurant is willing to participate or live with a different configuration, we plan to report that back to you all.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little background for context, because this started really with the previous council in 2020. originally the design for the restaurant that the city approved included an elevator in the building. Once the tenants got in, the contractor got in, it became very difficult to continue with those plans. And council made the decision at that time to approve a modified design for the restaurant that did not include the elevator, but did task the staff to continue looking at options to include an elevator after the fact, and potentially utilizing accommodations tax funds to fund the inclusion of the elevator. So that's why this is back up. While we're working on it, I know the resident of the island is very interested in ADA accessibility, follows up with us on these efforts. So just giving a little bit of context.
Just to add something to that, though, the reason for the confusion, though, was that the as-built plans that the restaurant received from the original construction were not accurate, correct? That was my understanding from when that happened. The plans that were actually in existence from the original construction of the restaurant made it seem that they could have had an elevator in one area, but it wouldn't fit there. Is that right?
The designer, the current restaurant's designer, as I understand it, made an error in what was in place. Whether his error was based on previous plans, I've never heard that before, but when they started building according to the plans that they submitted, they just determined it couldn't be built.
Okay, I thought there was some sort of structural framing that wasn't, that was confusing or not not correctly depicted on the as-built from the original construction. I may have been mistaken on that, but.
Yeah, we had very rough preliminary as-built, so if anybody relied on that, it would have been not a good plan.
Rusty.
Well, Desiree channeled my thoughts on her comments. So anyway, basically what I was going to reinforce is a little bit of the history, and I won't go into as much of that, but certainly from the get-go, we did have all indication that we were going to add an elevator. That didn't happen, and there was some discussion about whether that could be accommodated or not in the original as-built, and we decided to move on at that point, looked at some other options outside, that sort of thing, and determined, I guess it was last fall, that we would put this aside for the time being, which we did, but it's still an open issue. That's why I wanted it back on the agenda, because it's an open issue there with the elevator. And if you will recall, those of us who were on council at the time, the way we left it, as I understand it, is that we're going to go ahead and move ahead without the elevator in the restaurant, but we wanted to reserve the option. And Randy Bell was a part of this and making the motion also. I made the motion, but he amended it to include that we look for a future way to add an elevator and use accommodation tax funds as much as possible. Did I get that correct, Desiree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's why this is back on the agenda, because it really is unfinished business. It's something we had out there, and along with my motion at the time, and it was passed, and of course with Council Member Bell's amendment on that also. And we certainly want to do all we could do for ADA compliance. And it's one of those things that I feel like we definitely need to address going forward. So it's good to hear that we at least have people that have been out there, we've tried it, that's looked at it, come up with some suggestions, and that the restaurant group has it in their hands now to kind of think about and hopefully get back to us here pretty quickly so we can move forward with some other recommendations. Thanks.
So no action here. You'll just staff will update as this progresses. Okay. Other questions or thoughts? Thank you, Desiree. Rusty. Item D, discussion of council's code of conduct and disciplinary hearing procedures. At our last meeting, we discussed the need for council to develop a process and procedures for disciplinary hearing for our code of conduct. Since the code of conduct went through the personnel committee, even though technically it's not a personnel issue, I would recommend we refer this to them to complete the work they had started on the code of conduct and bring something back for all of council to review and approve.
Second. Second.
Questions or thoughts or comments?
Do you have any idea how long this will take?
There's a draft that's been provided to the Personnel Committee, which I think is a good starting point, so they can take it and go from there. I know they've been trying to schedule this week, but a lot of travel has been going on, so hopefully.
I would expect that we meet and have it either at the workshop. The draft, and if we can't meet those scheduled, it's certainly would have draft by the council, next council. The intent would be to have it at the workshop.
Which is October 11th.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item E, discussion about changes to the noise ordinance. I know staff has been working on this for a number of weeks, months, trying to get to something. You got a page in your packet with really thoughts, certainly not an ordinance form at this point, but at least thoughts and ideas around looking at Mount Pleasant. And I know other folks, Chief or Desiree or Douglas, who's any update or where you want to take this.
Well, we put together a one pager of some thoughts of, something that could serve as a blueprint for the development of an ordinance. We wanted council to react to that, to some of the recommendations or the things to consider. Our goal would be to amend present a recommendation to council to amend the noise ordinance to take out as much discretion from the officer when they're responding to noise complaints. And really try to have some black and white guidance for our officers and in our community and making sure that the residents know what to expect and what the limits are and what kind of resolution may be available. So, for the past couple of weeks, we've been looking at different decibel readings. Here, in the slide, if you go to the first one, Amy, please. It's just a scale that shows you what the average decibel readings are for different things. We're looking at 60 being a normal conversation, background music, 80 being a heavy traffic, a noisy restaurant, power lawn mowers. So we're looking at what a reasonable decibel measurement would be for daytime hours and nighttime hours. The police department has purchased some decibel readers and have been going around the island doing some measurements. We've done some at Front Beach. The next slide shows you those. As you all know, the Windjammer particularly has been doing a lot of outdoor concerts recently, more often after the pandemic. So we've been doing some measurements there. We can share this with you all, via email so you can see it. I know
It's a little eye strain.
I can't read it.
I know you're all squinting.
Oh.
It shows again decibel. There you go.
go.
Decibel readings for different locations around Front Beach. Some of the homes that are located near the Windjammer. They've also done some readings along Grand Pavilion Boulevard. I know we go back. Around Grand Pavilion as well, next to the Villages, the new resort at Waldoon. So we'll continue to do that. We'll do some, we have a storm coming this weekend, so there might not be a whole lot of party happening around. But we'll continue to do that so that we can bring back more data for you all to consider. But the goal would be to just make some adjustments to the noise ordinance so that we include some decibel readings.
Are they doing any studies of 57th Avenue?
Not yet. I don't think
There's,
that area.
I had a
been-
lengthy conversation with a resident that is representing several residents down there. And they're having a really rough time with the noise levels, with the music, like
That
early
was-
as 8 o'clock in the morning.
That last slide,
That was Grand Pavilion, adjacent to 57.
That's the same.
Yeah,
But
that's
I wanted to know particularly about 57.
That's it, right.
So that's, yeah.
It's right there.
That's not it.
Yeah.
It's over there.
It's a block there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the other side of the gray square.
It's on the other
70
side.
decibel.
But if using,
That's what it's
But
talking
they have,
Also expressed
but
themselves.
they have very serious concerns
Okay,
about what's going on, and a lot of the residents are quite elderly, and they're having a real problem, and I'd like to see that addressed.
so just for context too, so these readings were taken on a weekday at 4 o'clock. So not weeknights. That's something else that we'll send an officer there and make some, do some measurements at different days of the week and different times of the day as well. So this is just, again, one reading at one particular time.
But to follow up on that, I think we have the code is correct, and the noise ordinance that we have just needs to be enforced. That we have, and I have heard some complaints that they feel like that it's not being enforced. So I want to look at that down the road.
but I think the big issue is that the noise ordinance we have doesn't have, it's not enforceable. It doesn't have times and it doesn't have decibel levels. And that's what this,
Well, it
that's
has,
what this would hopefully do. I mean, I look at it, I look at it from both sides of it, from being able to enforce noise complaints, but also for places like the Windjammer to be able to have concerts and know we can do this at this level until a certain time. I mean, I was at a show a couple weeks ago and it shut down after less than an hour. I don't know why. I don't know if it was because of noise, but the way it is right now, my understanding is if somebody complains, that's it. So we need to do it to protect both the bands, the restaurants, but also the residents. And just my question on looking at this draft is when it gives you the areas and maximum of 60 decibels, where is that reading? Is that taken from the street? Is it from inside a house, outside? Like what's the?
According to what we've been looking at, it would be taken from the property line of the complainant.
Okay. But outside,
yes.
But for the residents on 57, and I think they were here last week, they presented. This is talking about noise levels inside the house. You can't hear inside the house. So if they're outside their house or sitting on their porch and they're getting a 75 decibel reading, I'm not sure that this necessarily protects them. So I think I think to Jimmy's point, we've got to look at that. I think that's a hot spot, and there are some issues down there that need to either be enforced or mitigated somehow for that resident pocket. I would agree on in the Windjammer. I can tell you Grace Potter doesn't play at 75 decibels. She played a lot higher than that. But you can, I think we ought to be able to figure out a way to accommodate those concerts as well, because they're in a commercial district, but they're not necessarily adjacent to, they're a ways away from the resident. We live close by and we enjoy some of that music in the evening, but it's not at a decibel level that's, I don't feel personally that's very disturbing. And they're very compliant as far as the time as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, to that point, Councilmember Pierce, when you look, under the exceptions, we included an exception for GC2, the zoning district that includes the commercial district
they
and
can go
on
higher,
Ocean Boulevard. So they would have, during daytime hours, they would have a maximum level as well.
90 to 100.
Right now, we have 90 to 100. This is still, we're still evaluating what that means. That's why there's a question mark, but the goal would be to have a maximum.
Have some limitation.
Have some limitation as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree that, in regards to enforcement, I think we all want to say, yeah, let's have better enforcement on this, but I also agree with Councilmember Myers too, that we've got to give our police department the tools to work with. And we've heard the chief say this many times. It's hard to be subjective when you're in one of those positions as the police department or whatever. You need to have something in black and white, if you will, that helps them clearly define what the violation is and if they've gone over and above the levels. And I know we've been talking too about a couple of situations here too, up on 57th, and of course the Windjammer, and those are certainly extreme examples, and we really need to help them get those solved too. But for the greater good of the island, I think the quicker that we can, study this, get some sort of consensus together that we can say, okay, these are the decibel levels that we can live with and enforce. And this is the way we measure it, and give our police department the tools to work with, the better off we'll be.
You looked at other communities to draft this, right?
Yes,
And you've spoken to them about how it's working as far as they're being able to enforce these and how it's citizens are responding to it. Is it achieving what they want to achieve in terms of livability and noise violations?
the police department, I know the chief specifically has been doing that kind of research, and we are seeing across the country a move from, similar ordinances as the one that we have to a decibel reading ordinance because of the ease in enforcement and taking out again the subjectivity of an officer responding to a call. So we are seeing this trend moving in this direction. The Mount Pleasant ordinance is one that we're monitoring very closely. They had a trial period of a couple months. Now they are moving forward with an approval of a first reading of their ordinance. They still haven't ratified it yet, but they're also moving in this direction. So it seems to be working very well for them so far, but that's just something that we'll continue to monitor and get feedback on.
Do we have, do all officers have decibel meter?
They,
Do we have enough?
I think we have 2 or
You're
3 that we've purchased. But
mean,
the
is it-
technology has dramatically improved, in the very, very recently. So they're very, they're inexpensive. It's
So it's not,
equipment that we would have to
would you
find.
be able to accommodate that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Mount Pleasant, they ended up at 60. They were,
I believe theirs is between 55 and
yeah,
60.
they were looking, I think, increasing. I think the final came in or they're heading towards 60. And I would ask too on the EP, if you check the EPA levels, I think anything 70 to 75 for extended period of time can cause hearing impairment. So we're looking at a 75 sustained at the commercial district. We may want to take a look and revisit that and lower that a bit if that's, just check those out.
Okay.
Yeah, so Desiree, staff and chief continue to monitor, take readings, and then I think you're hearing enough to take this to ordinance forum once we feel comfortable with the numbers, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, we can put a draft together, very high level for you all to react to at your workshop meeting and provide more feedback. We can provide more data between now and then, and we can go from there.
Mr. Mayor, I suggest that this should be addressed in either a workshop or a special committee, ad hoc committee, because it needs to be, I think, a little more detailed.
Say ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think we let staff continue to do the monitoring and come back with the draft, and then we can see how close it is to what council's accepting.
Okay. I'll wait.
That's just my opinion.
Wait.
Desiree, Douglas, anything else? You good?
No, sir.
All right, item 6, new business, consideration of request from Suncoast Filming for city-sponsored event status for filming scenes for feature film on October 12th and 13th of 2022. Need a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. In your packet, you've got the layout of kind of where and when and what, but Desiree. go ahead.
Yes, there have been some changes from the proposal that you have in your packets. They're filming a period piece. I think it's hysterical that they're thinking period piece is from 2004.
God.
They will be filming on the island historical film on the 12th and the 13th. They are prepping on the 12th. They are not filming on the 12th. They're only filming on the 13th. They have since requested the ability to rent and secure the entire municipal parking lot for that day because they will be filming in the municipal parking lot. They're also filming at a restaurant in our commercial district that day as well. We've communicated to them that they will have to pay for the entire parking lot, assuming that it's completely full, a per space per space cost, and they'll be paying that. They are requesting again, only a handful of parking spaces on Ocean Boulevard on the 12th, and then the day of filming, they want the entire parking lot and additional spaces on Ocean Boulevard and between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's a weekday. We don't expect or anticipate, this being,
Isn't that Thursday and Friday?
that's correct.
Wednesday.
Wednesday and Thursday. So Thursday would be the day where the municipal lot would not be available for the public, but Ocean Boulevard would still be available, and the small parking lot would also be available.
Okay.
And this is featuring Woody Harrelson.
All right, you've got
See, I
a
looked in 2004.
I
motion
doubt it.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item C, consideration of proposal for the construction of 2 pickleball courts and rehabilitation of 2 existing basketball courts. Cesare, won't you, before we do a motion in a second, because we may just make sure we get the motion right, do you mind doing a quick update on this one? Please.
You want me to do the update? No? Oh, okay. Yes, sure. Okay, this is a project that the city planned for in the budget, to construct. Our original plan was to construct 1 pickleball court and fully rehabilitate the 2 basketball courts that we have outside. We budgeted a total of $225,000 for both projects, $75,000 for the pickleball court and $150,000 for the basketball courts. We issued a request for proposals, got 1 bid back. Y'all remember this is the one that we had to do twice because we didn't get any responses the first go round. And we received 1 proposal for each of the projects. The proposal for the pickleball court construction came back at $107,650. But that means they're constructing 2 instead of 1. We budgeted 75 for 1. They'll be constructing 2 for 108,000. And then the bid for the basketball courts came back at 187,856. So roughly $30,000, $37,000 over budget. We do have, I just want to make you aware, we do have the rec building fund that was put together many years ago, and that's a fund essentially made up of donations from community members. We have $98,000 in that fund, and I think that would be a great use of that money to for us to approve an award and be able to get this constructed. This is a small project at the end of the day, and one that we will continue to struggle to get contractors interested in it. I know Norma Jean personally reached out to multiple contractors, and I think we almost begged to get proposals in. So we recommend moving forward so that we can go ahead and get this constructed before the season. We're looking at a total $70,000 in addition to what's currently budgeted, which could be taken out of the rec building fund.
I just want to make sure that the building fund doesn't say for a new structure, that it can be used for anything.
Anything in the
Recreation.
recreation grounds.
Off property.
Thank you.
There. I was looking at the position of the pickleball courts. Will there be removal of any trees, or will it just be thinned out canopy?
1 magnolia tree.
That doesn't count.
They're beautiful, and
We get the question.
one other point that I wanted to make, when we first started about the construction of the pickleball court, we originally thought about the location between the baseball fields where we already have a concrete pad that's not really used. Based on the side visits that we had with the contractor, he recommended, and we agreed that there's a better location, which is depicted in your packet in a map. That will require the relocation of the batting cages. So that's something that we'll have to be, we'll work through as a separate project as well, so that we can maintain that amenity in the rec grounds.
What is the for the basketball courts? What are they just being made bigger, and are they being totally demolished and start over, or what's happening with basketball?
Yes, they're being completely rehabilitated, redone. from the ground up
And repositioned.
and repositioned as well.
Does that need to be done in order to do the pickleball? Do they have to be done in together?
I don't think they need to, but
Basketball courts need to be redone.
they need to be redone, but they don't need to be redone with the pickleball
It doesn't
court.
have to be done. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Just so, let the council know, I've used True Lock before. They redid some alleyways for me at Hamlin Plantation. They're a great company. They've been around for a good bit, so I feel a little comfortable with using them. For whatever that's worth.
Need a motion? Yeah, need a motion to approve, as the, because I know we talked about if we're gonna use the rec fund, how to specifically.
I would recommend a motion to approve an amount not to exceed $300,000 toward a true lock for the construction of 2 pickleball courts and the refurbishment, rehabilitation of the 2 basketball courts. Excess funds or, the difference between the budget amount come out of the recreation building fund.
I will make that motion.
Other questions? Comments?
I know they will be very highly utilized because the tennis courts are very popular with
It's a need.
pickleball.
Yeah.
So I think that the community will thoroughly enjoy this.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item D, discussion about changes to adult.
Did you-
You far, Jan?
But I.
All right, let's keep moving. Discussion about changes to the dog ordinance to add a section specific to dog biting, chasing, or harassing. Chief Fournette, I think, based on the recent incident with the unfortunate attack we had recently, wanted to make a tweak to our current ordinance. Chief, you want to take?
I'll be brief. Sometimes the best way to figure out if something's working or not is to just do it. We made the charge based off of the ordinance that we adjusted earlier this year. And we had discussions with our city prosecutor and our new code enforcement officer, just happens to be a very experienced animal control officer from New York. So he brought a lot of knowledge down, and there was some concerns about charging a dangerous dog before based off of a bite, because the dog's not been deemed dangerous at that point. The bite and the conviction of the bite would be what makes it a dangerous dog. And so that's why we are coming forward with this statute, this ordinance that would basically give us the tools to say that we're charging for the bite itself. And sometimes a bite may not be enough that it makes it a dangerous dog either. It might be a little barking or something like that, chasing something around, not necessarily a dangerous dog, but something that we still need to address. So this ordinance would give us that ground to lay first so that we can make the proper charge upon conviction of this. If it was in fact a dangerous dog, based on the judge's ruling, it would be declared a dangerous dog for previous or future charges, should any of those arise, or it would also give them the ability to designate as a dangerous dog, making them permit with the city and to meet all the requirements outlined in the dangerous dog statute or ordinance for keeping the dog on their property.
Given what happened a month or two ago, would this have helped in some way or not? In that case, it's extreme, I know, but this conversation came as a result of that.
It certainly did. And me talking with the city prosecutor about the case and the charge, and he was really recommending that we do something different to actually address the bite separate from the dangerous dog. This would have been something that clearly laid the groundwork to define the dogs as dangerous dogs.
But bottom line, you don't know until it happens. I mean, basically, the dog is going to go out and attack someone, and when the incident occurs, I mean, that's when we first know, well, this is a dangerous dog.
Correct. And in our charge in the beginning was not a bad charge, because we had additional information that we were able to use to define that dog as being dangerous. However, we're not going to have that with every other dog. So this is going to give us that ability to make these charges in the future, still address the bite, and clearly meet the guidelines to define what a dangerous dog is or not. Again, that one was still a good charge. We had additional information about that specific dog.
This is just giving you the ability to charge something and the dog, when a dog has just bitten somebody for the first time.
Absolutely.
Something for the first time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I understand about the biting. Tell me about the chasing or the harassing.
Well, sometimes if you have a dog that doesn't necessarily get to bite you and they're chasing you, running away from it, it's still a dog that had the intent to do something. And if we just say biting, then we can't do anything with it. You know, not saying that every dog that wants to run and play is going to be charged with this. There's still officer discretion and taking the totality of circumstances of every call that we go on before we make any charges. But it just gives us that ability, because if we just say biting, if there's no bite, there's no violation. So this gives us those tools. Just because it doesn't get to sink the teeth into somebody doesn't mean that they're not a dangerous dog. Again, doesn't mean that they are either, just because they're chasing and playing.
That's chasing. Okay. What about harassing? What does harassing mean?
Harassing would be more towards your other animals. You know, you get other dogs on the beach and they're trying to go at them and fight them. And that's where that harassing comes in.
Okay.
Chief, are you planning to come back with the tweak to the ordinance, I guess, based on any of this conversation, or?
I gave a proposal to the city administrator.
Yeah, your packet includes just a one pager of what that section would look like. Our next step would be to put it in ordinance form for council to consider at your next meeting.
Okay.
So do we need a vote?
No vote. We would just,
Chief, thank you. Scott, you'd ask this next item, E, workshop midway checkpoint discussion. We've had 2 workshops, and I do feel like I owe residents an apology of some form. We had one scheduled for September 13th. I was overindulgent, and we had a special council meeting before that. Kind of blew off in so many words. We have most of the agenda items are on this agenda tonight, and we had a blurb on the website that talked about canceling the September 13th workshop. So we did not get to have that one, but we have the topics tonight. So I could have done a much better job of communicating that and kind of running through that. So Scott, sorry.
No, that's all right. Keep.
Anyway.
No, I just thought it would be a good idea. We are halfway through. Personally, I sent a note out to all of council. I'm a fan of having the aggregated reporting that I think we're getting all at the same time, the same information. So I think that's a very positive step. I think, however, though, sometimes without all of the committees in place, what I'm sensing is that by the time we do get to them, either they've festered to the point of boil, or in some cases, they're too early to address. So, and again, these are just my opinions and observations. So, I think that, I don't know if we end up heading towards a hybrid where we look at some modification to the committee structure down the road. But for example, right now, I think with the marina coming online and we still got issues with the tenants, for us to wait, again, these are my observations for an entire month to get to a workshop that may or may not occur, or a city council meeting. Perhaps we reinstate the or have the real property committee be reinstated for a period of time so that they can address the issues of the tenants in the public real time on a more working level, so that by the time things do get to a workshop or council, that they're, some of these things have been vetted, and we're not vetting, in front of, the whole council. I think they can work through these things. So I'm just throwing out some ideas. I think there might be some hybrid structure that might be beneficial for the council and the residents. We've also, by elimination of the committees, have eliminated 6 opportunities for the residents to come speak to us and give us their feedback on certain issues. And I think I know that's been communicated to myself. When I ran, I am a workshop fan. I wanted to try it, but I think that we may want to take a look at some tweaks and do this as we progress over the next few months so that we don't end up flat-footed in January.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, we've had 2 workshop meetings so far. We had one scheduled that we had to delay, and it's all on the agenda tonight. So we've only had 2 meetings with the workshop structure to really look at it, to determine how effective it's been. To me, it hasn't been enough time. But I would say this also, we have referred a couple of things back to committee, personnel committee, and now our real property committee does have a couple of things that we're going to be addressing in regards to the marina area down there. And I'll be frank with you, we've had quite a September 13th is when we got charged with going back to real property to address those issues. And we just today finally got a meeting scheduled for October the 5th because we're working around everyone's busy schedule. And maybe that's a one-off, I don't know, but it took us 2 full weeks to get that meeting scheduled. We will have it October the 5th. We will discuss that. We will have that come out of committee with some recommendations to full council. And I guess we'll go back to either a workshop or wherever we end up with that. And then we'll end up having more discussion about the things that we would have discussed anyway, had we just had a workshop. So to me, it looks like if we go immediately back to committee meetings, particularly we've just said, okay, let's reinstate the real property committee for the next 2.5 months or so that we've got left in the year. To me, it just seems like it just delays and pushes things further down the road. I don't know that we save any time by doing that. Because anything we decide in committee has got to go back to council anyway, or anything we recommend in committee. So I guess what I'm saying at the end of the day is let's see if we can see this through with the workshops the way that we determined we would do, but also having the opportunity out there like we've utilized to say if we want to reinstate or call up the personnel committee or real property committee or public safety or public works or whatever, to have them work on an issue, we still have the right to do that, but as much as possible, try to keep it in that workshop format. Remember, when we voted for that, and it was a 7-2 vote. I mean, we had a couple of members that are not in favor of it, and I totally respect that. And those members have gone along with the workshop structure and have been very patient about it too. But when we voted 7-2 to put the committee or the workshops in place, one of the main reasons we did that is because we said we're missing something here because council members with their busy lives, busy careers, did not have the time to go back and look at separate committee meetings and get the gist of what was discussed in those committees. And so therefore the thought was, we have a workshop where all of those items get discussed with public participation. If the public chooses to do it, they are not forbidden from doing anything. Then let's try that and see if it can be more effective. I'm just basically saying we have not given it enough time. Thank you.
Jimmy.
I was against the committee, disbanding committees at the beginning, and nothing's happened to change my mind. I know that for many years I've been on Public Works Committee, and some residents have had the experience of if they want to know what was going on in Public Works, they didn't talk to Donnie, then they would call me, and then I'll present things to Public Works. We're able to get a lot of things done. I think the committee format is more answerable to the residents. These workshops, they last way too long, and in my mind, my experience, they don't touch on all the specifics that you can get done in a committee. And hash out the details. And then on the other end of it, just because you have committees, you don't have to have a meeting. You can have a meeting if it's necessary. But to have all the department heads sit through the workshops, and some of them have last 3 hours or more. I know one committee I sit on with Kevin, our meetings will last 15-20 minutes, and usually Public Works will last about an hour, but we cover everything. It's very detailed, and I just feel like I got a better handle on what's going on in those committees, and I'll read the minutes from all the others. So I'm hoping that I'm open to working on it a couple more months, but I sure hope we go back to committees. Thank you.
To say I'm leaning toward bringing them back also. I thought it was a great idea. I think it was good in theory, and it hasn't worked as well in practice. I think one of the things that Councilman Streetman just talked about with the difficulties of scheduling, I mean, we never had a hard time getting people to show up to the real property committee meetings when they were scheduled, because we knew exactly what time and when they were going to be every month. And now it has taken us 3 weeks to schedule one meeting. So, well, it won't be until next week, so it'll be 3 weeks total. Thank you. So it's, you know, I'm curious to see what happens as the year goes on, but I definitely think that I'm seeing that we might have made a mistake in getting rid of them. So.
Let's don't forget that there was a lot of redundancy in those meetings we were attending when we were all on committees. I would listen to something in committee, and then I would listen to it at the Ways and Means, and then I would listen to it again on the general council meeting. So I think there's a way to take this workshop format, tweak it a little bit, not talk about important or time-consuming issues in the workshop. For instance, this parking layout plan for the marina is the perfect example of that. Let 2 or 3 of our council people sit down, work it out, and then bring it back to us for final decision. So we still see the product before it's acted on, and can it go forward with it? That way we are more efficient. We're still part of everything, but we're not repeating ourselves over and over again. So if we do go back to committees, I think they need to be a different format. That what we had before didn't work.
Yeah. Nope. You want to go? Go ahead.
Kevin,
You have it.
Mr. Mayor, I was one of the other vote that I did not want to suspend committees. I wanted to keep committees. But I was on the wrong side of the vote. The majority won, so we have workshops, and I'm okay with workshops. I guess where I'm confused is we have workshops and now we're going to have committees. And what's it going to be? And now we're adding meetings to us and to staff. So I'm just confused. Are we doing workshops? Or are we doing committees? But now it sounds like we're doing both. And personally, I'm with Councilman Myers and Ward. I'd like to go back to committees.
Yeah, and to confuse the matter even further, you know, I do think the reporting aspects of the committees being brought up to the aggregate for the workshop does save us some time and efficiency, because we all hear the outcomes together. And I think hopefully that takes some burden off of staff having to repeat themselves, to Jan's point, over and over and over again. But when an issue arises, to wait an entire cycle, I think that that's where the hybrid comes in. I think some issues could be worked better, maybe at a committee level before they get to the council or to a workshop. So something to consider.
What, just for our purposes, in the past, I mean, it would be helpful as you all make these decisions for council to decide on a process of who and when issues are selected. Let's say we go through a hybrid model. What are the issues that council feels like they need to be looked at a little bit closer at an ad hoc or committee meeting? Because in the past, what we have seen is issues would go through the committee process, and by the time they get to council, the council members that were not part of that conversation, that were not part of that decision making, you know, did not feel part of, again, the process. So there were issues at the time that, you know, council felt this is too big of an issue to just be discussed at a committee level. So I think we would need some guidance from you all, and you know, you all speak on, you know, by vote of council, so a majority rules. We would need some guidance too on what those issues are. What are the issues that you think could be discussed at a committee level? And what are those issues that are too big for one committee to just take on by themselves? That will be a challenge for us to decide or understand, at least.
Yeah, well, committee decide when you need committee.
Well, I mean,
We can have a meeting about deciding.
well, I mean, that's kind of what we did, like with rec, where we decided for a month or two
Just see it.
during the summer that we didn't need to have the rec committee, right? You know,
Right, you don't need it.
You
don't
had it
need don't
set.
meet.
You had it set, and then you had the ability to say, we'll skip this month. And, you know, maybe it's, maybe rather than trying to to create something that's not set. You set it and then you have the ability to cancel it. I feel like that might be easier for people's schedules.
And then the Ways and Means meeting would certainly be almost equivalent to what we're doing with workshops.
It's the same
determined.
people. Yeah.
Say again.
I was gonna say we're all 9 of us attend, so that might be one that stays with the workshop format or something. Yeah, those, I think it gets back to, and you know, we're not doing anything here tonight, but give some thought to, you know, do we need a rec committee? You know, or do we need all of these committees? So it gets back to, you know, if we did a hybrid, what would be the most efficient way to not confuse Desiree and her entire staff or overburden them and make it a way that we can also maybe consolidate the reporting. Those are just some ideas.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? So we've got good conversation tonight. We've got a workshop on the 11th of October, and won't you just continue to think through what the feedback's been here tonight and start, you know, we'll start formulating what life could look like moving forward.
May I make one last
I
point?
wish you would.
Change is good sometimes, and sometimes it's not so good. But it's important to recognize when we may have made a mistake. And people talk about redundancy. Well, government is supposed to be redundant. You know, you're supposed to say things so everybody understands what you're doing. And if you don't want to come to meetings, then maybe this deal isn't for you. But you know, it used to be years ago, Ways and Means Committee of Mile Pond was 3 members. And then they would, and it's always been, you know, it's always been 9 council members since 1953.
I do know that.
Yeah, that's true. But it was just 3 people that were on Ways and Means, and they bring everything to the full council, and the full council would approve or disapprove. It was very efficient. Just something to think about.
Yeah. Good conversation. Thank you. So item F, report to council per procurement code, section 110(3)C. Got 2 items. Desiree, do you want to go into detail or just want me to read? Because it's, we don't need approval. It's just a report out.
Yeah, this is just a report that I need to make monthly on purchases that are budgeted that are under $25,000. 2 of them this month, the purchase of the de-escalation simulation training system for the police department and the purchase of an ATV for beach patrol. We don't need a vote or motion. This is just a
Perfect.
report.
Thank you for your report. Item G, financial statements. Debbie's not with us this month, so just real quick, you've got a couple of different pieces in your packet. For August 31st, I'm not going to spend time. That's really only 2 months worth of our fiscal year, and given our timing of expenses and revenue, as you certainly know, Jimmy, doesn't really tell us too much. Amy, if you go to the next page, if you don't mind. I will touch on Debbie's notes, though. Fiscal year to date, August revenues are generally in line with normal trends, with the exception being business license and building permit revenues, which are up significantly over the same time last year, which were up significantly over the same time the previous year. Those numbers just continue to blow me away. Expenditures are in line with budget targets. City ends August with about 33 million in cash deposits, about 2.7 are unspent bond proceeds, about $1 million is unspent ARP funding, and 13 million is restricted for tourism related expenditures or beach preservation. All expected fiscal 22 revenues and expenditures have been recorded, and the audit is prepared for October. Unaudited results indicate general fund revenues exceed general fund expenditures by approximately 3.5 million, which we'll touch on here in the next topic. Charleston County has provided property value assessments for purposes of setting the millage rate for October 22 tax bills. Total assessed values have increased 6.7% from prior year. Based on the analysis from Charleston County, the tax revenues are expected to meet or exceed the fiscal 23 property tax budget. Therefore, no millage increase will be necessary for the fiscal 23 budget. And we'll touch on that here in just a moment.
Would you say that again, please?
No millage increase? Is that
Okay.
what you want to hear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So we do have about 3.5 million. Amy, I'm gonna get one more slide. Yep. Oh, sorry, just keep going. Should be about 4 or 5.
Yes.
Right there.
There.
So these are the unaudited results as of June 30, and you'll see the highlighted number to the right, which is a general fund overage of about 3.6 million, rough numbers. So to have Debbie close out the books and have the audit done, we need to decide what to do with that excess, if you will. So I'll make a recommendation and we can take it whichever way you want to go. Put 10%, leave 10% in the general funds. That's 358,000 roughly. Take 5% to the disaster recovery fund, which will get us to about a $3 million number in disaster recovery, and put the remainder into capital projects, which is about 3 million. The capital projects and general fund, we can use those funds at any point in time. If something comes up, and we'll talk about some of those as we continue to progress forward in this current year with other projects or other items we might want to do. But that's just, again, to clear the surplus and let Debbie close out the audit.
Mr. Mayor, the percentage amount to the disaster recovery fund was 5%. Do you have a dollar amount on that?
Yep.
179,000.
Sorry. 179,000, which
Would
will
you
take us to about a $3 million.
Yeah. Are you going to make that in a motion or you?
I
make a
can.
motion?
We need a motion or
I'd like to make a motion to approve the mayor's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, so again, just for clarity, it's 10% stay in the general fund, 358,000. 5% go to disaster recovery, which is 179,000, and the remainder stay in capital projects, which is roughly 3 million.
May I ask one question? Sure. Desiree, this good for you?
Yes, that's Debbie and I's recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Other, Scott.
Yeah, I would like to push some funds if possible, and I don't know if it's within the capital budget, but we talked about maybe starting the practice of initiating a sinking fund for our future assets to replace instead of having to go out and borrow money all the time. Would this be an opportunity to maybe peel off even some money? I don't know what the 1% was, is that keeps appearing in the budget and then disappearing if we don't use it. So in other words, just start accumulating for a down the road thing.
Yeah, and I think if we can do that after this audit, if we can, because this money will sit in these particular funds and we can move it at any point in time we want to, but just.
So
clear
if it's in the
audit.
capital, we can deal with it later, is
Correct.
what you're
Yes, sir.
saying. Okay.
And just from an expediency standpoint, to have to set up another fund and such, I'd like to get the audit closed down in October.
Fair enough.
And then we can come back and revisit that, Scott. I'm with you.
Well, we did that for several years.
Yeah.
Previous. Yeah.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item, Jimmy, in case you missed it. The first two times, consideration of millage rate for tax year of 2022. Again, the information from Charleston County shows that we do not need to make any adjustment to our debt service or operating millage for 2022. So we need a motion.
What is that millage rate? Do you have that number? Is it 23.4
23.4
or something?
I have it right here. For the operating millage is 0.0191 and 0.042 for the debt service millage.
So 23.
23, yeah. 0.3.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we consider the millage rate for tax year 2022 to be the same as previous.
You're confirming the budgeted millage rate.
Yes, I am.
Second.
questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Desiree, capital projects update.
All right, I'll go fairly quick. We'll start with the phase 3 drainage. As you can see, there's been work has restarted at 30th Avenue. The contractor has completed the installation of the pipes up until the point that they needed to move to 36th Avenue and delay the road closure to after they complete 36th Avenue. So they started mobilizing this week to Forest Trail. So a lot of good progress on that. 41st Avenue, still waiting on permits. We did hear back from OCRM that they are very, very understaffed. That's why they have a huge backlog of permits. It's been over a year, so we should be at the top of the list, I suppose.
One would think, yeah.
And last month, we reported that we had requested an amendment to our grant application for funding the construction of 41st Avenue. We submitted an amendment to include $730,000 for the piping of the section of 41st Avenue between waterways at the end of the road. We have received official notice that that grant request has been awarded, so we'll have a total roughly $2.7 million, $2.3 million for that grant. So we're very excited about that and appreciate the help from our, Thomas and Hutton and our grant writer that we've been working on these projects with. The next one is the comprehensive drainage master plan. Ryan and Aaron gave you an update, so I'll just jump on that to try to wrap up the meeting. I know we have executive session coming up. Underground utility conversion at 21st and Palm. We have everything on hand. There's just one final piece that Dominion Energy has to secure, which is an easement from the church. We've been in communication with our church partners to get that paperwork signed and ready to go. That will allow Dominion Energy to release their construction contractor. We are still looking at this project to be completed this fall.
Good.
Pickleball, we addressed that. Once we have the contract executed, we'll issue a notice to proceed. The updates on the Marina Public Dock and Green Space. We are working on an RFP for the improvements of the bulkhead that we talked about last month. That should be going out in a week, within a week or two. We understand, so that work would be conducted in the off season, and our goal would be to tie that to the work on the green space as well. The Real Property Committee will have a meeting next week, and we'll talk about the parking layout and how that will work alongside with the green space along the entire bulkhead along the intercoastal waterway. So more to come on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a call from a former council member, long-term council member, the other day, and he was speaking on behalf of a number of people, unidentified. I'm not going to go into names that he called, but they were basically talking about the public dock, and a number of these people that he was relaying the information to me are kayakers. And they've been going down to the public dock, and they've been wanting to launch their kayak, get it in and out. And the absence of cleats down there is kind of an issue for them, because it's very difficult for a lot of them, to get up there to get into the kayak for launch or to get out. And I'm just wondering if we could somehow, do something in that regard, knowing that we've got all this other work coming, that we could, somehow look at adding some cleats, adding some apparatus there to help people launch kayaks and get out of their kayaks more effectively and efficiently in that area there, pending all this other work going on.
So the challenge with that is that a kayak launching device is not included in the permit for that dock. So that would have to be something that we submit. It's mostly procedural, but we kind of have to go through the process and request approval from OCRM to get that installed. The cleats, that was something that we intentionally removed as part of the improvements that we did once we took possession of the property to avoid boats tying to the dock. I don't know if there's something in between that could be installed within permit that would facilitate the kayakers launching from there. But we have issues with the permit, and too with the cleats could be used by boats. And I think the goal at the time from the council and the city was not to allow any boats tying there.
There were actually boats tied up there last weekend tying to the pilings. So the minute that we put cleats there, it's going to be full of boats.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that's probably going to happen. But as my understanding also, Desiree, talking to you, and I think Chief would reinforce this also, we do patrol very regularly down there around the clock, making sure that there's nothing going on at that dock. And I know that we can't be there all the time, 24/7 or whatever, but it would seem to me that we would have the we would have the capability of making sure that there's not a lot of just nonsense and foolishness and trouble going on down there at that
We
dock.
do have security cameras that are monitored 24/7. So just
okay.
in case those were installed earlier this year. Let us, I'll take this feedback back and see what we can do by looking at the permit and just what's feasible.
Okay.
We can do that.
And this may be completely off subject. I missed the last part of that, but monofilament recycling or trash cans down there would be awesome. So somewhere for people to put.
Yes.
Just
and-
for planning purposes in the future, because I've seen a good deal of, fishing line like all over the place.
We did have some garbage cans out there. We pulled them out because they were being completely overused by residents dumping household garbage. And it just became very, very difficult to monitor and maintain. So we made the decision to pull them. We still haven't figured out what a long-term solution might be. We know that folks from Goat Island do dump a lot of household garbage there. And that's certainly not the intent. So we're still kind of working through what potential solutions might be available.
One quick question, if I may. Is there any way that we can find out some data about how many people are using that dock? Is there any way to get a counter or anything installed?
I would think that, that a counter might be, I don't know how much that technology costs or how it would be installed, but
Maybe Douglas might have some ideas.
he usually does. Douglas, do you have an idea?
I mean, those little security cameras,
Mhm,
they go off every time somebody goes by it,
mhm.
and it shows you a number of videos per day.
Okay.
Like the
So there is some data available right now.
No, I don't, no,
No,
the
there's
current
not.
one we have doesn't get that.
But there's
Just that
technology that I
simple-
think we could
Yeah,
purchase.
the camera was tripped 15 times today. Rough magnitude.
Yeah, I'd like to look into that. People are asking me how many people are using them. I don't know.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right, 34A Beach Access ADA compliant boardwalk. This contract has been executed. We expect work to start in the next month or two. And then the last update is the municipal garbage compactor at the municipal lot. We issued an RFP earlier, actually last month, and we got proposals back last week. We're still evaluating those. We got two. We want to go through them with a little bit more eye for detail, maybe ask them some questions. So we'll be making a recommendation to council for an award of for that project in October. Both proposals did come in under budget, so we'll have extra funds to install the odor control system and the weekly maintenance and rat maintenance that we wanted, the exterminator contract that we have implemented. So more to come on that next month. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Desiree. Item 7, boards and commission reports. Board of Zoning Appeals minutes are attached. Planning Commission meeting in September. Accommodation Tax Advisory Committee minutes were attached. Environmental Advisory Committee minutes are attached. Item 8, ordinances, resolutions, and petitions. The only item we have is C, resolution and petitions. Resolution 2022-09. Authorize the consumption of beer and wine and amplified music at the IOP Connector Run on October 1st, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The
Is this,
run's been
That's been
canceled.
To be determined.
Okay,
So we can approve this pending a date. We've got everything
Okay.
dated for October 1st, but we'll approve it pending whatever date the race might have happened.
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At 9, I'd make a motion to go into executive session pursuant with South Carolina Code 30-4-78-2 to receive legal advice related to potential claims concerning alterations to Isle of Palms zoning districts.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Off record at 8:28.